Alright, so we wanted to provide you guys with an update on how our mini split has been doing in our bus. So we've had this mini split in for about 8 months or so. So we've had the opportunity to have it go through kind of a fall, a winter, a spring, and now a summer here in Arizona. So if any of you have been through here or you live here, you know that we don't really have a spring and a fall. It's just different variations of summer and then like a very short winter. So anyway, the spring and the fall are somewhat similar, and in those conditions, those are ideal for this thing. It will keep up, and it, you know, if it's below 90 degrees and it's not super sunny and stuff, it does awesome. Like today is a weird day. It's June, but the high today is only 93. Last week, the high was 110. So there's a huge difference, and it's overcast today. So the AC today has been doing amazing. So if we look at our little temperature guy, it's 92 or 93 outside, and it's 71 in here. So it's nice and cozy in here. It keeps up, it does well. It's only a 12,000 BTU unit, but it seems to keep up. Now, during the winter, we were told it's a heat pump also, and we were told don't expect too much out of the heat pump. It doesn't perform very well at anything under, say, 50 degrees, we were told. So we waited until there was a day where it was 40 degrees, and we turned on the heater just to see, hey, is it even going to work at all? Because our expectation was maybe it's just not even going to work. All right, it's the first cold day here in Arizona. Well, not the first cold day, but the first cold day that we've gotten the bus. And so we were curious about our mini split system to see if it would do well. So when we went to get the bus, I think it was in the low 40s. Now it's about 50, it says, outside. And we've had the little AC running for just a few minutes just to see if it'll work and just to see if it'll come on. And at first it didn't come on because it had this defrost setting. But in the bus, it is, yep, about 50 degrees or so. And we've got our little AC going, and we've set it for the max heat. And it does feel like it's putting out some warm air. So it's putting out about 98 degrees. Can you see that?
Kinda.
So let me see if I can shoot it in there. So we're looking at there, it's putting out temperatures over 100, and it's 50 degrees outside. So we were warned when we put this in that there's a good chance that this thing may not heat at all. So even in mildly cold temperatures, but it seems to be doing okay. So maybe there's hope for this little guy. So let's see, it seems to be getting warmer too. Yeah, it's pushing out 104 degree air, which I think in this little space will work to bring the temperature up pretty quickly. So we'll see. We'll keep it on for a few minutes, and then we'll report back and see how it's doing. All right, it's been about, I don't know, about 30 or 45 minutes or so since we started the heater, and it has raised the temperature, let's see, about, I don't know. So the outside temperature is now 55 degrees. It was 50 earlier, and inside here it's 62. So this thing's blowing still pretty good. It still feels really warm. Let's see what it's blowing out of there. So it looks like it's blowing about 110 or so. So it's blowing warm air. So there it's, whoops, hard to see there. It's at about 111 or so. So it still seems to be blowing some pretty warm air, and it seems to be keeping up okay. We've been in and out of here because we're working on the door today. So anyway, that's the update. Now into the summer. So now we're getting into the summer, and it's getting hot. Like I said, 110, 112 are not uncommon, and just really bright sun. And so we don't have it insulated in here, as you can see. So it's just a big metal box, so it cooks in here. It will often get to 120, so we keep it in storage then we work on it 3 days, and then, or I'm sorry, 4 days. So we keep it in storage for 3 days, and the temperature climbs, and we know that because one of our subscribers sent us these little sensors, and what they do is they store the information in there. So I'll show some graphs from these guys, but they store the information, even if, so they sync with your phone, and they'll show you kind of a readout of what's going on inside and what's going on with the temperature, and then it gives you graphs of that data, so we know even when we're not around how hot it gets and stuff like that. So on the days where we go pick it up and it's 110, but when we bring it here, we turn the AC on typically, and it will take pretty much all day for it to come down to about 80 degrees or so. So it takes a long time to cool it down, just because the sun is still beating on the bus, and then this thing is having to cool it all the way from 120. So if we were going to stay in an environment like this, this would not be enough cooling probably for this bus. I'm saying that a little prematurely because the insulation we feel is going to make a big difference. We don't know how big a difference. We'll make a video when we do the insulation and stuff like that, but it should make a substantial difference in the cooling capabilities of this thing. We have made a couple of modifications down in the bay, and then we'll show you those. Alright, so we're outside right now, and this is running, and it's extremely quiet. That's one of the things we love about this thing, is it just doesn't make a lot of noise. So one of the modifications we did make, though, is we added this bracket up top. So what we've done is we've bolted that to the back wall and then put 3 screws through the top of this unit just to keep it from teeter-tottering around. So it has 4 bolts that keep it on the base, and those are rubber mounted to this thick metal piece, but we thought it was just a little too shaky, and now it's completely solid. So we don't worry about that anymore. So we did do that as a modification, and then the other modification is kind of a strange one. So we had to change out our 50 amp breaker, and so what would happen is once in a while when we put the thing on shore power, it would start to charge the battery, and then it would pop the circuit breaker, the 50 amp breaker. And we knew, based on all our Victron stuff and based on our battery monitor, that we're only pulling about, I think it was about 30 amps or 28 amps from shore power to power both air conditioners and charge the battery at 50 amps at 48 volts. So the total we were pulling was only about 30 amps, but it would pop that breaker, and it kept doing that, and so we'd have to reset it, and then it would randomly pop it. Well, then about 3 nights ago, what had happened was it just, anytime this AC kicked on, it would immediately pop that breaker. And so then what I did was I took everything else off. So I turned everything else off, turned the battery charger off, turned everything off, turned that AC off, and so the only thing running was this AC, and it's on a 15 amp breaker. And so it would pop that 50 amp breaker every single time. And the weird part was it never popped the 15 amp breaker in the main box. So I knew it had something to do with that. And so what it turns out is that breaker was a GFCI breaker. And when I bought it, it was kind of just a spa breaker, and it was GFCI. And what happens is they say that with these inverted mini splits, if you hook them onto a GFCI, that there's something about the resonance or something when this comes on that will pop that breaker, not because it's overloaded, but because it thinks that there's some kind of ground fault. So we experienced the same thing when we had it on a plug, because we were plugging it into the garage, and there's a GFCI outlet, and it would always trip that outlet. So at the time we thought maybe it's drawing too much amperage, or maybe we got too many things on that circuit, and then we would plug it into the wall outside, which is not a GFCI circuit, and it would run fine. So after doing about a couple hours of reading on the internet and on these HVAC channels, we had discovered that this is supposed to use a non-GFCI breaker. So we went ahead and changed that out, changed that to a non-GFCI breaker, and since then it's been running flawlessly. So if you're gonna put one of these in, put it in front of a non-GFCI breaker. All right, so that breaker in there feeds our Victron inverter, and so out here we're still protected by this EMS unit. So we have a Progressive Industries 50 amp EMS surge and voltage, high voltage, low voltage, as well as open grounds. It will report all kinds of things. So we feel like we're still adequately protected despite the fact that we don't have GFCI on that main breaker going in. All right, so that is a overview of how our system has been doing, the modifications we've had to make. We've been really happy with this unit. Like we said, there's no insulation in the bus. We're still building it out, and it's pumping out cold air just the way we expect it to. So it's been performing really great. Like I said, it's super quiet. It's running at full speed right now, and we're able to have a nice conversation, and it's not overwhelmingly loud. So we've been really happy with this so far. So as we get a little further on the bus and we install insulation and start putting furniture and things in here that will actually make it like a real motorhome, we'll report back on how it's doing and if it performs better. We do expect it to perform significantly better with insulation in here. We'll report back if it does or doesn't, but we are hoping and suspecting that insulation is going to make a big deal in here. So hopefully, you know, that coupled with traveling to places where there's nice weather will keep this thing operating really well and serving us really well, which it has been so far.